From the 17th to the 19th of January, Lynne Symons, Kathleen Hoare and Kim Cooper, senior leaders from Mark Oliphant College, visited High-Tech High in San Diego, California, United States. It truly was an amazing story. The first slide is particularly interesting to us because the pennants of the various universities are one of the major features that one sees as we walk around the school. In fact, it was the first activity I saw kids doing. From the time that they're in the high school part, and high school in America goes from year 9 to year 12, they actually talk about themselves as the class of 2015, the class of 2016, etc., etc. So kids actually start thinking about what colleges, what universities they might go to, what courses they might do. It's part of the whole ethos of High-Tech High. The other part is looking at the laptops in the other picture. Surprisingly to us, High-Tech High wasn't that high-tech. We didn't see lots of computers out in classrooms, and in fact we would say that Mark Oliphant College is far more high-tech than High-Tech High is. However, it is still an amazing story. This story I'll actually begin at the end and tell you what we have now. High-Tech High is now 11 schools going from K to 12. It caters for approximately 4,000 students. It has a graduation rate of 98%, which is phenomenal. Of that, 90% go to college, and of that, over 90% to 4-year degree courses. But what is even more phenomenal is that they have, from college, an 80% success rate. Kids are not dropping out. The other part that is truly wonderful is that they operate the nation's first graduate school in education. They offer courses in a K-12 setting that are relevant to the teachers within that setting and to other constituents in California. So back to the beginning. High-Tech High only began in 2000. It was conceived by a group of industry leaders in San Diego who were very worried about what they were considering would be the great digital divide. The schools in San Diego were not actually producing the kids that they thought would actually take the positions in the New World Order. Secondly, there was a massive underrepresentation of women and minority groups in that. So the group of leaders came together and applied to become a charter school. They approached Larry Rosenstock, who at that stage was working for the federal government in education. He had come from Cambridge, Massachusetts, where he had headed up a school system then, and he talked about what might look like to be a different charter school. So in September 2000, they began as one school, one high school, year 9 to 12. They actually took over the old Navy buildings in Liberty Station, Point Loma, and when they started, all that was around them was some abandoned Navy buildings, some being sold off to become a new housing development. So very similar to the situation we found ourselves in Mark Oliphant, being the only school out there. What High-Tech High has now grown to is 5 high schools, 4 middle schools and 2 elementary schools. They are situated that there are 6 schools on the High-Tech High original site at Point Loma. There are 3 at Chula Vista, which is right next to the Mexican border, and there are 2 at North County, which is slightly out of San Diego. So what's different? Well, what we found was nearly everything. They believe, like we did when the school was established, that the schools will be small. Not particularly in American terms, where you're talking of even middle schools of 2,000 to 3,000 students and high schools of 5,000 students. They believe 350 to 400 is the optimum size for a school. The schools that we saw were all discrete units. They all managed themselves autonomously. However, they were in the High-Tech High design principles, the operational principles, and in fact you could think of High-Tech High as a small district, cluster or even education department. But they had a massive commitment to grow their own staff and leadership. In our entire visit, we did not meet one leader who had come from outside High-Tech High, who hadn't been grown in it. As you go through these slides, you'll see on the left or right-hand side are examples of the productions of student work, because that is one of the main features I'm about to talk about. High-Tech High design principles started off with 3, there are now 4 of them. They are personalisation, adult-world connection, a common intellectual mission by everybody in High-Tech High, and what they call teacher design, but we would call teacher teams, and a project-based learning approach, but much different than any project-based learning approach I'd beforehand ever had great qualms about. I need to also say, as a charter school, they are They are not an independent school. They follow all the California rules and regulations. They have to actually sit for all the mandated tests that one does in California, and their teachers have to be accredited under the Californian process. Personalisation, obviously the small size of each school, very much like Mark Oliphant, there's an openness of facilities. It's actually far more industrial. The places look like the new age technology workshops, although, as I said, we didn't see the range of computers we thought. There's a massive focus on the exhibitions of student work and explanations about what that student work is demonstrating in terms of the learning. Staff are given a group of students when they come in there. They're vertically grouped. So in a high school, it'll be year 9 to 12. So you always have graduating class or seniors, and you always have freshmen. And you're their advisor for the time those young people are at High Tech High. In the elementary school, that is slightly different, but in the middle school, they follow that theme exactly. Absolute emphasis on integrated project-based learning for all your learning programs, and that went from elementary school through to high school. And every student has a digital portfolio by where they produce their results, produce their work and show their work. Mind you, so does every staff member. Adult world connection. So they have to have learning outside the school. In year 11, they complete a semester-long academic internship. We didn't actually quite work out how many days a week or how many weeks that was in a local business or agency, but certainly massive amount of work has been put in by High Tech High in making adult world connections, as probably a charter school seeking outside funding as well would do. But there were huge political and business connections of the school. The seniors, in terms of their graduating year, have to do a substantial project that enables them to learn while working on problems. And we were actually part of a class that was doing governance as one of their final year units, and looking at the sort of work that those young people are involved with. In 9th and 10th grade, as well as the middle school, students will shadow an adult through a work day, perform community service in a group project, or engage in power lunches with outside adults. Very similar to the stuff we do. It's the higher end stuff that's far more significant. A common intellectual mission. This was probably the biggest thing that whether you're doing a uni course or what we would call a vocational education or trade course, all students are expected to graduate. There is no sense that you're going to leave at any point before graduation, and all of you will go to some higher institution of learning. It is a non-selective school. It actually takes all its students based on a lottery across San Diego based on the distribution of the postcodes. So if the postcodes say this is how many people we have in this area, that's how many kids get into High Tech High. You apply to go to High Tech High. You can put a preference down that you prefer to go to Point Loma or North County or Chula Vista, but if you get in, you have to go to any one that you want to. Because they're not part of the state system, you don't get bused to the school. It's expected your parents will actually drive you there. There are 100 students for every vacancy. It's a total inclusion program. When you actually apply, the only information you give is your name, the year level you're going into, and your postcode. So no idea if a child has an NEP, as we would call it, or any other area of disability. There's an inclusion person in each school, and there are academic coaches who actually work inside the classrooms, what we would call SSOs. Teaching staff undergo a rigorous selection and induction program, a commitment to the HTH way. They are interviewed by students, past staff, to even get to the first part of the process. Then they actually have to do a series of readings where they then have to respond to them because of the huge commitment by the school to social justice. Then they actually go through what is called an Odyssey. That gives you a bit of an idea about High Tech High, but the Odyssey enables people they start 2 weeks before the regular school starts.